my name is Triss and welcome to my channel. So for today's video, I thought it might be fun to do a sort of top 10 things I learned working in a historic house museum. I am currently working in the collection of a local museum, and well, it's a great job, first of all, but it's been an interesting experience because, you know, despite everything that you learn in school, you learn in the books, there's always just something about every job that you can't prepare yourself for. The first thing I learned was that you never know what you're going to find. I mean, you might be working in a Victorian museum, or you might be working on a living history farm museum. Maybe you're in an archive somewhere. But no matter where you find yourself, you are going to find something. You're going to lift a box lid, you're going to go into a corner, and you're going to find something that you just do not understand why it is there. In my case, we once found a box of human hair, which makes sense. In the Victorian era, they would collect their hair in these little hair receivers, and then they would sew them into bracelets and jewelry, or just use them to stuff pillows and all sorts of things. So it makes sense that we have it, but it was still not what was on my agenda to find that day. So, that brings me to the second point, which is when in doubt, wear the gloves. When you go through sort of audit handling, you find that each material is a bit different. So you wouldn't handle ceramics the same way you'll handle silver, and you won't handle silver the same way you'll handle textiles and things like that. But at the end of the day, if you're wearing latex gloves, you're usually better off wearing them than not wearing them. And you should always have a pair of gloves handy. I've been caught a couple times in places where I'd have to move something, and to do that, I'd have to walk all the way back to the other side of the museum where I left my gloves to put them on, to pick it up. So it can get a little bit tricky. So always have that extra spare pair of gloves with you. So number 3 is that you are going to have favorite items in the collection. You're going to get really attached to certain pieces, and your coworkers and you will have very different faves. But for me, one of my favorite things we have in the collection is a teeny tiny suit of armor that was probably a desk set, but it is a little miniature suit of armor, and it's incredibly adorable. It looks like it was designed for a doll, and I think it's precious. We also have in the hallway, we have a radiator that has a built-in plate warmer, which I think is really useful and kind of quirky because you don't expect it. The smaller the institution, the more hats you're going to wear. Number 4, because most museums can't afford or don't have the space for a staff of 20 or 30. So you might be hired to work in the collection, you might be hired to work as a tour guide, you might be hired to work in the gift shop, but inevitably there's going to be an event, or there's going to be a crisis, or there's going to be a sort of a time crunch that's going to come up, and you're going to have to throw your hat in, and you're going to be moving furniture, you're going to be giving tours for a coworker who called out or something like that. And it's actually really great because it allows you to learn everyone else's jobs to some capacity, which is really, really great. And I think that it kind of creates a more cohesive team when you kind of have a general idea what everyone's doing. So I worked in a bigger institution where I did my job most of the day, and I just sat at my desk and I did the same thing, which it was fun and it was enjoyable. But when someone comes in and asks you, hey, can you run the gift shop today? It's kind of fun because it gives you like a little bit of a change of scenery, and give you a little bit more appreciation for the people who are doing those jobs every day. Because of that, you got to prepare to do physical labor. Number 5, because there are days where I go in, I'm dressed up and I feel cute, and I end up finding out that the cleaners are coming to vacuum our carpets, and they're going to be here in an hour, and we need to move all the furniture out of the upstairs bedrooms, and it's like Flight of the Bumblebees, and then I have to put it back when everything's done. And it's always great because you can always rely on your coworkers to help you out, because your coworkers definitely know things you don't, and you should listen to them, especially the older coworkers and the older docents. We have volunteers who've been at the museum for decades, and you may have read the tour guide, manual from cover to cover. You may have seen or handled most of the objects in the museum, but there's always that story or that little anecdote that you just don't know. And so when you let the other museum professionals in your space tell you what they know, you can learn from them. And then even the new people who come in, they've been more recently in classrooms learning the more the current methodologies and things like that, the procedures that museums are supposed to follow. So they actually do have information that you don't have. So just keeping an open mind, I think that's good in any job, really, because you can't know it all, and if you think you do, probably not very fun, honestly. Um, the next thing I learned is, like, competition is really stupid. And I think that when you work in some places, people can get really territorial about their ideas or about whether or not, the thing that you're doing is going to sort of step on their territory. And I just find that most of the time people really do want the best for the institution that you work at, or they want the best for the object in question. Everybody's really there for the same reason. And so just kind of letting that go and just learning to say, okay, well, maybe I put that project together, but it's okay if this person takes it and changes it and puts a new spin on it, because inevitably it's going to be better and it's going to be more interesting. And I think that always is the best way to handle any sort of dispute. But um, another thing I learned working in museums in general is that everyone knows everyone. Like, we will have people from other institutions show up and they interned with so and so at this institution, and one of my coworkers worked as a tour guide over here, and this person went to grad school with that person, and it's just, the museum world is super tiny and insular, and everybody knows everybody, and they've all got like little stories about, well, when so and so first started and they didn't know where this thing was. So it's kind of a weird little world, and can be a little intimidating sometimes, because you worry about, uh, did that thing I did when I was an intern in grad school, like, is that going to come back up? And it will, but it'll be funny and everybody will care, because everybody else probably did it too. Um, Next, after this one was, guests ask the strangest questions, and kids ask the best ones. You will be giving a tour, and some guests will ask you when the heating system was installed and what kind of pipes they use in the house, and it's not in the tour guide book. It's not in any of the material that you've ever seen before. Or somebody wants to know if the crown molding was made in a particular workshop. I had one guest once ask me what year a particular knife polishing block was manufactured, and I actually knew the answer to that. I was pretty proud of myself. But you're not infallible. You're gonna get stuff wrong, and that's okay. That's okay, because if you laugh it off, and you can always get information to email the guest and get that information to them. Some of the questions they ask, though, are hilarious. And kids in particular, we have kids who come in all the time and ask if George Washington lived here. Another favorite one is, where do we keep our dinosaurs? And I'm so brokenhearted to tell them that we don't have any dinosaurs, because I wish we did have dinosaurs. I don't know where we put them, but that would be fun to, like, have a dinosaur. Maybe we should just have, like, plushy dinosaurs in the gift shop, and that would solve the problem. Either way, kids ask the best questions, and they're so funny. And especially during the holidays, when you have large amounts of them coming through, they are going to have so many questions that are going to keep you on your toes, and there's just no way that you can anticipate or prepare for those questions. And again, that's okay. A lot of times this gives you like the opportunity to just go look those things up, and then the next time it comes up, you're really proud because you know the answer. Um, and you know, you can usually find that the guest knows that the question they're asking is really obscure, so you know they're kind of in on the joke. And the last thing that I learned, and probably the most important, is that volunteers are the greatest resource you're ever going to have. No matter how many people you have on your staff, no matter how big your staff is, no matter how long you know you've been working there, how educated everybody is, no matter how tuned into the collection, you know how much of an expert people are, volunteers are sort of the lifeblood of any museum. So if you've ever been thinking about volunteering for a museum, or you feel like maybe they don't need you, they do. They need you. They need you. It doesn't matter how big the museum is. If you want to be a part of it, please, because volunteers are the ones who, you know, help run tours or go through and set up for big events. They're the ones who are out there helping fundraise. They're the ones who are doing pretty much all the grunt work. And I don't think that we in the museum world acknowledge them nearly as much as we should, because, you know, especially during times where we've had fewer volunteers due to, you know, the school year maybe being in session, or maybe people are, you know, not able to get out as much for whatever reason, you know, you feel the pinch. And it's not only is it more work for the staff, it's honestly, it's sort of, it's not as interesting when you don't have people to talk to and you don't have people to listen to, because all the volunteers that I've ever met have stories about all the other institutions they've gone to, all the other things they've done. And the fact that they're there in the first place and that they want to help you shows that they really care about the institution. And honestly, that's great, because I think museums are going in a really interesting place. And I think that we're becoming more aware of the history of everyone, like ordinary people who occupy these spaces, servants, workers, just even just people in the local community who may have interacted with these historic houses. We're focusing on marginalized groups. We're focusing on expanding the definition of what objects are important and how we interpret those objects in our spaces. And so I think having the volunteers come in with their perspectives and saying, hey, this is something that, you know, I've always wanted to come here. I always wanted to see this, but I always felt like, you know, wasn't for me, or I always felt like I didn't sort of see this thing that I was always interested in learning about. And when you take those from someone who still cares enough to come in and work with you, you're really getting the perspective of somebody who cares. And that is going to create a much more interesting space. The community is really important, and that's why your institution exists, is for the community. So if you do not work in a museum and you want to work in a museum, that you don't want to go through the day-to-day grind, I mean, volunteering is a great way to be a part of it. And if you do want to consider a career in museums, it's a good time to do it. Where it's right now, the outlook in these public institutions is really changing. So I think it's very exciting, and hopefully this was a fun and informative video. And I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye.